Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits and it is a beautiful day outside. It's gonna hit 80 and what more could you want than a nice popsicle? So today we are gonna dye some yarn with some of these ice pops that come in those bags. You pop them in the freezer and they are a great thing to enjoy on a hot day. But they also come in a lot of bright colors, so why not use them to try to dye some yarn? Although the ingredients of these ice pops do contain citric acid in addition to the food coloring, I pre-soaked my 100 grams of stroll sock yarn in some tap water with 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. I wanted to make sure that there was enough acid for all of these colors to bind as they are melting. We are in full sun and I've got my 100 grams of yarn. I'm going to sort of arrange this onto my tray like so. I've sort of laid the 2 sides on top of each other and I'm sort of trying to spread it out a bit. I know that the color penetration is going to be pretty shallow. So I want, in order for this not to be super uneven, to try to sort of spread things out so that way maybe dye can access some more parts of the yarn. Let's see. Oh, okay. So actually, maybe we can do something like this. Okay. I hadn't really decided how I was going to do this because, ha, it's frozen. Because I knew that hopefully this won't be too hard to untangle later. Alright, so I wasn't sure how separated these would be, but I think what I'm going to do is cut. I'm going to try to cut some slits in these and then put them on top of the yarn. So I'm using my knife and I'm sort of cutting these slits into these popsicles. I could try to remove them, but I think that this is actually giving us something kind of cool. So these will be able to leak out. Now, one thing I haven't tried yet, I have not yet tried to dye yarn with some ice cubes, but hopefully at some point we'll try that. But I sort of like the order that these colors are in. Alright, so I'm just, if you had a box cutter you could do this. I'm just scoring this. And so you can see that it's open. So now, when I bring our yarn back over, it's going to put this down on top of our yarn, like so. And now we just have to wait for it to melt. So hopefully, because of the way that I've arranged this, we should get, I mean, we'll obviously have some white left behind, but hopefully we should get some color penetration throughout the entire skein. I'm not expecting to get a repeating colorway, but I am curious to see how much food coloring there actually is in these popsicles and how deeply it penetrates onto the yarn. So right now these are, okay, we're starting to get a tiny bit of liquid, but they are still really solid because I just removed them from my freezer. But I will come back, I guess I'll check in half an hour and we'll see how we're doing. 30 minutes in, and it looks like some of these containers are starting to feel pretty empty. You can see some purple sort of along the bottom there, and I definitely see sort of some green melt along that edge. But I'm going to go ahead and give this a little longer so then we can see before I try to pick it up. Maybe did I not slit this one? That one's looking pretty liquid. So I might need to pop those, but woohoo! Oh good, I'm glad to see that this one melted eventually. I'm not seeing too much liquid around the edges, but I'm curious. There's still ice. Not really. All right. So it has now been an hour, and I think we have just about tapped out all of this dye. And wow, that's actually really, really cool looking. We've definitely got some speckles of color. Unfortunately, they do not go through the entire hank of yarn. You know, there are some white patches in here, but this is actually really fun. Look how bright these colors are. And in this sort of middle section, I think where there's a bit more liquid trapped maybe, we got a little more variation in there. But let me go get a microwave safe plate. All right, so now I'm going to pick this up and attempt to sort of pull this back into the hank. And you can see that we've got a lot of liquid here. That liquid is already clear. There is a lot of clear liquid there, but our yarn has all of the color. So now I'm going to go microwave our yarn on high for a total of 4 minutes until the yarn is piping hot to set the color. But since the color is all in the yarn, I expect that it is already sort of reasonably set. I just finished microwaving the yarn on high for a total of 4 minutes, but I did the microwaving in 2-minute increments so I could check on the yarn briefly in between to just make sure things weren't drying out. I didn't use any plastic wrap, but I used this silicone microwavable topper to help keep the liquid inside so the yarn wouldn't dry out. And now I'm going to let this cool completely so we can wash the yarn. Our yarn has cooled, and now we can start washing it. The yarn, oh dear, there we go. The yarn probably will require a fair amount of washing because we did melt popsicles all over this. So there's a lot of sugar and other gunk in here. But what we can see from those first rinses is that the water is already clear. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of clear dish soap. I like to use the clear dish soap because it helps me see if the color is bleeding versus adding some color of its own to the yarn. Frequently with sugary things, yeah, the yarn starts, or the water starts to look a little translucent versus transparent. But let's see. I'm not seeing any bleeding. Woohoo! I am going to let the yarn soak in this soapy water for a little while, but then I'm going to rinse out the soap, rinse it a few more times, and hang up the yarn to dry. And I'll come back when the skein of yarn is ready and we can talk about the beautiful yarn we created. Here is the finished dried yarn. There was not as much coverage as I had expected from these popsicles. I suppose I expected the melt would spread out more, but I think that since I only scored the popsicles, the liquid really ran off in a small area, giving us some small, vibrant patches of color. And I mean, there are some areas that are a little more pastel with spread as well. The color coverage is not even. There's some areas where you can see there's like a chunk of white without a lot of color. But I do believe that there is color in every round. There are some areas like over here where we seem to have some really nice color penetration. And the areas with the most color are absolutely delightful with these random speckles of color. This is a delightful speckled splotched non-repeating colorway, and it was a lot of fun to dye. I sort of wish I had a second package of the popsicles so I could have rearranged the yarn and put more popsicles on to melt after this first round. But I think it's a lot of fun, and I really want to try making my own popsicles, well, really just some ice cubes with food coloring in them to play around with more in the future. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. And if you are interested in supporting ChemKnits on a more personal level and would like to help contribute to the materials used in these videos, check out the ChemKnits Patreon. You can find a link in the video description. Thank you so much for watching this sticky, fun, melty dyeing experiment. I'll see you next time.